Hello once again, you beautiful misfits. Matt here with the 5th of my never-ending series of videos covering E3 2017. Which incidentally have taken me so long to get done that not only have at least 2 of the games featured in this particular conference already been released, but No Man's Sky is actually good now. Still, a promise is a promise, so let's crack on with the Sony conference, shall we? Or the PlayStation E3 Media Showcase, to use its fancy official title, which was once again hosted at the venerable Shrine Auditorium in Los Angeles. The show kicked off less bombastically than last year's, with this musical quintet on tabla drums, a sitar and other instruments playing some pretty chill melodies. Alas, this only went on for about 3 minutes, which is a pity because I was really enjoying it. From that, the show went straight into a trailer for Uncharted: The Lost Legacy, a standalone spin-off of the Uncharted series that is out now. Instead of cocksure, swaggering, smart aleck Nathan Drake, this game's protagonists, or deuteragonists as I should say, are Chloe Fraser from Uncharted 2 and Nadine Ross from Uncharted 4, setting out together on a grand adventure to... well, I'm not entirely sure actually, as I couldn't hear a fucking word they were saying. Sorry miss, could you speak up a bit please? Yeah, thanks to the sound engineer asleep at their rig, all we had to go on was pretty visuals accompanied by the hoots and hollers of the audience. From this we can at least deduce the game will play like previous Uncharted titles with jumping, climbing, shooty bang bang, punchy punchy and driving through a succession of linear levels. Oh, and the storylines likely got something to do with Ganesha here, the Hindu god of learning and removing obstacles, whose hobbies include writing, dancing, eating sweets and riding around on a giant mouse. Or a lion, a tortoise, a snake, a swan, a peacock, a boring old horse, sometimes even a scooter, and occasionally a chariot. Pulled by mice. In short, he's got more epic mounts than a 10-year World of Warcraft veteran and is an all-round cool dude. Meanwhile, the annoying crap sound issue persisted throughout the next trailer, which was for Horizon Zero Dawn: The Frozen Wilds, a DLC expansion for Horizon Zero Dawn, set in some frozen wilds, if that wasn't entirely obvious, where our red-headed heroine Aloy gets to hunt even more robots while dressed in spiffy high-tech outfits that, presumably, keep her comfortably snug in the cold. It's not all bleak icy chills. According to this trailer, there are also some hot springs and a volcano. So if you love Horizon Zero Dawn and were left hungry for more, you got this to look forward to. I'd love to tell you what the story is about, but as with Uncharted: The Lost Legacy before it, I couldn't hear a poxy word anybody was saying. From there we were hurled into a gameplay trailer for The Last of Us Sons of Anarchy, or Days Gone as it's officially called, where the sound problem persisted for a while longer.
They've got me. You said the man was firing.
Eventually, as Beef Cart Man here rockets off on his bike down a muddy road, the sound engineer finally woke up from their erotic dream about pies or something and sorted the cocking audio out. Took you bloody long enough. After which old BCM here gets chased by a wolf that can somehow keep pace with his bike. Let's just assume it's a zombie wolf, shall we? Shortly after that, Mr. BC Man's neck makes an unfortunate rendezvous with a rope strung across the road, yanking him off his bike and straight into a QuickTime event. Something he's understandably not very happy about. Oh come on, it takes longer than that to choke someone into unconsciousness. So I've been told. Cue some ambling around the woods, discovering a load of corpses hanging upside down from trees, walking through said collection of hanging corpses, and quelle surprise, one of the corpses turns out to be a zombie. During this bit, the stream cut to the stage itself, where 3 blokes hanging upside down, pretending to be dead, start thrashing at the same time the zombie in the game does. Well, one of them does, the second bloke misses his cue somewhat, and the third one doesn't move at all. Now I could say, talk about an easy paycheck, but those performers were probably quite uncomfortable hanging from the ceiling like that. For all we know, that third bloke could have passed out from all the blood rushing to his head. Poor sod. After some more ambling through the woods, Mr. Beefcart finds a camp full of ne'er-do-wells who've rigged the surrounding area with noisy tin can alarms and bear traps. Ario Beefwagon here combines these convenient tools with his natural stealth skills to sneak past the camp to a sort of fortified compound where a bigger bunch of ne'er-do-wells are keeping his personal mechanic a prisoner. This isn't too big of a problem for old Meat Home Alabama, however, given there's a convenient pack of zombie flesh eaters nearby and he happens to be carrying enough C4 to blow a hole in the compound wall. A bunch of zombies swarm in, the baddies run from the zombies, and Beefcart rescues his friend, whereupon they share a brief, tender moment together before a zombie bear arrives on the scene. It looks alright I guess, but nothing about this really excites me, you know? It's The Last of Us with more traditional zombies and some Uncharted style vehicle segments. We've been oversaturated with post-zombie apocalypse fiction in all manner of media since fucking time immemorial, it feels like, and no matter how cool this one is with its neat little tactical options, ultimately it's yet another zombie game. After this little demonstration and almost 14 minutes into the conference, Sony's Sean Layden came on stage to welcome everybody and officially open the proceedings. His arrival heralded, of course, by contractually mandated epic orchestral music.
Welcome!
Still living the dream, eh? As I mentioned, Sean was here to welcome everybody, properly begin the proceedings, plug PlayStation.com and other jovial bits of corporate small talk.
And through our strategic partnerships with third-party partners, PlayStation is home to all the biggest and best franchises in the world.
And so on and so forth. Right before stepping off the stage, however, he went and pulled a sort of half-assed Columbo on us all.
Before I step off,
this was the cue for the reveal of Monster Hunter World, another instalment in the long-running Monster Hunter franchise which I've never played, and so according to this, appears to involve throwing a lot of green luminescent glitter everywhere, before sneaking up on a huge T-Rex looking thing and throwing on a crude ghillie cloak made of leaves. Now, I'm no expert on Monster Hunter game mechanics, but shouldn't he have put that on before sneaking up on the giant T-Rex looking thing? After stalking the giant sniffing T-Rex for a wee while, our bold hero leaps onto its back and knocks it to the ground with his massive sword, then staunchly and valiantly, runs away? Like I said, I'm no expert on Monster Hunter-ing. Anyway, a dragon suddenly shows up and snatches the T-Rex away, causing our valiant Monster Hunter man to go sod this and call in a pterodactyl airdrop of what are presumably other Monster Hunters. Cue title card and action montage fading to a confirmation of a vague early 2018 release date. One nugget of info not revealed here, however, is it'll be available for PS4 and Xbox One, with a PC version sometime after that. So if you're a Monster Hunter fan, feel free to try and sell me on it in the comments section below. I might end up giving it a try. I can't promise I will, but I might at least possibly perhaps maybe think about contemplating it. After that came a trailer which opened with a view of what even I knew to be that big tower from Shadow of the Colossus, appropriate given it was, surprise surprise, a trailer for a remaster of Shadow of the Colossus. Or maybe it's a remake. It seems nobody at Sony can really make their mind up about that. Aside from all that, well, what else is there to say? It's a spiffy, prettier looking Shadow of the Colossus for PS4 that spares you the hassle of digging your PS2 out of the attic. You roam the land on horseback hunting the titular colossi, climb them when you find them and stab them in their glowy bits. Enough said. I've even less to say about Marvel vs Capcom Infinite. It's Marvel and Capcom characters fighting alongside or against each other. They all look like dead-eyed plastic golems, and it's out now for those of you that are interested. After that came the obligatory Call of Duty, specifically Call of Duty World War II. Again, not much I can really say about this since it's bloody COD innit, albeit a COD that's ditched the inexorable march into a future of lasers, exoskeletons and mechs in favour of simpler, less complicated times when there were clear good and bad guys. Also, history tells us. Judging by this trailer, it's all very Saving Private Ryan. Albeit if Saving Private Ryan had been written and directed by Michael Bay. After that smattering of unremarkables, it was time for the PSVR segment, whereupon I immediately lost my ability to care. First on parade was Skyrim VR, of course, because we hadn't seen enough of that already, had we? Nor have we heard the Dovahkiin theme enough. I said all I'm going to say about this in my Bethesda conference video from eons ago, although one advantage of being a bit late with this vid is I've since learned more about how it plays, courtesy of good old George Super Bunny Hop Weedman here, who got to play a bit of it at Gamescom. Apparently, far from being an immersive experience that lets you walk the icy plains of Skyrim as if you're actually there, according to George it has the exact same stop-start micro-teleporting movement bollocks that 90% of all other first-person VR games have nowadays. Hooray. In stark contrast to this was Starchild, a 2D side-on sci-fi platformer that actually piqued my interest, at least until I remembered this was still the VR segment, and so it was technically a VR game. In its defence, however, at least it isn't an FPS with dull teleporty movement. Looks nice too. After that came The Inpatient from Supermassive Games, a first-person survival horror game set in an asylum. A spooky, creepy, dark asylum of course, because this is video games, where no other kind of mental health facilities exist. Don't get me wrong, I love me some creepy old sanatoriums, but just once I'd like to see a horror game set in a bright, clean, modern psychiatric hospital. How's that for a challenge, game devs? Anyway, The Inpatient is still a damn sight more interesting looking than Bravo Team, also by Supermassive Games, which looks about as completely generic as someone born in Generixford. To Mr. and Mrs. Generic later got a master's degree in generic studies at Generic University and went on to marry the most honourable Generic Vive Generic III, 14th Marquess of Generixton. Before that, however, we got Monsters of the Deep Final Fantasy 15, a Final Fantasy fishing simulator. Fuck me, talk about scraping the barrel. On the bright side, the game they closed this interminable segment off with, Moss, had some genuine charm to it. Whereupon it was back to the non-VR games and another showing of God of Snore 4. I mean, God of War Snore. I mean, just plain old God of War, since they've now dropped the numbers. And as with last year, the crowd went wild for the most trivial things, like the mere sight of Kratos' back here. Before Kratos does what Kratos does best, namely killing lots of things in between dispensing macho bullshit life advice, such as
a warrior must not feel for his enemy,
and
close your heart to their suffering.
Meanwhile, the boy from last year's reveal is confirmed to be Kratos' son. Jormungandr the World Serpent makes an appearance as a possible ally, and Loki pops up in voiceover form only to throw some shade at Kratos and his fellow Greeks.
And here I thought your kind was supposed to be so enlightened, so much better than us.
You can tell it's Loki because he sounds condescending and snide. You know, I'd probably care more if the game wasn't about Norse mythology. Nothing personal against old Odin and chums. Their various incarnations just feel a tad overused right now, what with the Thor movies and American gods. You've all likely guessed I would have preferred an ancient Egypt setting, and you'd be right, but there are plenty of other old pantheons to pick from too. The gods of pagan Slavic folklore, like Chernobyl for example, could have been a really interesting pick. I would also have preferred a completely different protagonist, but nope, everybody loves Kratos for some inexplicable fucking reason. After that came some more of Detroit Become Human, aka Detroit Androids Have Emotions Too, from David Cage of Fahrenheit, Heavy Rain and Beyond Two Souls fame. Set in a not so distant future where androids are used to do all the boring, menial jobs no living human wants to, like shoveling snow, welding pipes, staring at alleyways, or singing in dark rooms. This snippet of gameplay was intended to show off how you, the player at home, can influence the outcome of Detroit's supposedly numerous branching narratives, allowing you to bend the story to your indomitable will, at least in theory. As pretty as it looks and however many choices the game story gives you, however, going by his previous work, I just don't trust David Cage to do these very well-worn sci-fi themes, I might add, much if any real justice. Case in point, there's a moment in this trailer where Marcus here, leader of an android resistance group, tells a bunch of newly liberated androids, and gynoids if you want to be pedantic, that they are now free to be their own masters.
Now I have come to tell you that you can be your own masters.
To which the newly liberated androids reply,
We're with you!
I'll follow you, Marcus.
I'm with you, Marcus.
I'll follow you, Marcus.
Now, do you think Marcus corrects them on this? Do you think he tells them that part of being truly free is accepting no masters other than yourself, and you perhaps shouldn't immediately pledge eternal undying fealty to your immediate liberator, no matter how nice he or she may seem? Of course he fucking doesn't. He accepts their newfound unconditional devotion to him without so much as an electronic murmur of protest, more than happy and eager to send them off to struggle and likely even die in his name. What a cunt. Anyhow, while Marcus and his merry band of indentured servants make a public nuisance of themselves, a bunch of newsreaders ask very important questions, such as,
Could our machines now be turning against us?
No, don't jump to conclusions, that sort of thing only happens in Blade Runner. Ex Machina, The Terminator, The Matrix, Metropolis, Rossum's Universal Robots, Westworld, Demon Seed, Tron, Saturn III, iRobot, War Games, Daryl. Really, David Cage? Do you honestly expect us to believe all these works of fiction, or anything even resembling them, never existed in the world of Detroit Become Human? Was there no Elon Musk or Stephen Hawking to say, hold on a minute, what if these androids go all brain wrong? And as for the various narrative and moral choices you're hyping up, well, if this trailer's any indication, they'll all probably come down to being either Mahatma Gandhi or the Reverend Jim Jones. Anyhow, after that came a trailer for Destiny 2, the sequel to Destiny obviously. Long story short, some new bad guy with a huge throbbing hard-on for the giant spherical traveller entity turns up on humanity's doorstep one day and kicks our collective arse. Cue portentous, faux profound nonsense about Darkest Hours, Legends Rising, and naturally shitloads of guns. And because this is the Sony conference, the trailer ends with some guff about platform exclusive doohickeys like an exclusive strike mission, exclusive gear, an exclusive ship, exclusive exotic weapons, and an exclusive PvP map. After which Sean Layden re-emerged from backstage to bring the proceedings to a close?
Okay, everybody, just breathe. Yes. That was quite the roller coaster ride for the last 60 minutes.
Really? I thought roller coasters had ups as well as downs. Plus, it was actually only about, 50 minutes and 17 seconds at this point, by my counting. Perhaps he'd meant to come out and say that after all this gameplay and cinematic footage for Insomniac Games' new title, Spider-Man Arkham City. Whoops, sorry, I mean Spider-Man. Just Spider-Man. Spider-Man. Except anyone could be forgiven for making that comparison since, well, there are some pretty damn obvious similarities. There's stealth takedowns, a verticality to the environments that allows for vertical takedowns from high up vantage points, and even gadget takedowns. And that's before you get to the regular old fisticuffs, which, you guessed it, looks very much like the combat in the Arkham games. Which I'm not in any way implying is bad for the record. I mean, if you're going to take some inspiration from another superhero game for your superhero game, then the Arkham series is a damn good choice. Unlike Batman, however, old Spidey here only duffs up the bad guys just enough to web them up for the NYPD to collect later, instead of making them drink their meals through a straw for the rest of their lives. He's also able to use more of the environment to his advantage, like in this bit here where he swings a girder into some goons. The gameplay demonstration concludes with this dramatic helicopter chase through New York, with Spidey swinging between buildings and indulging in rather an awful lot of quick time events, which had some people worried the game might end up being a linear, level by level kind of affair like Uncharted for example. Thankfully, it has since been confirmed the game is open world, so PS4 owners can look forward to swinging their way across New York when the game is released sometime in 2018. Assuming Insomniac nail the whole web slinging thing of course, because with great web swinging traversal mechanics usually comes a great Spider-Man game. Or at least a decent one. Anywho, with that, the conference was finally over and oh no, wait, there was one final video montage thingy showing off all of Sony's hardware and games. Okay, now it's over. And that means time for my verdict. Meh. Apart from a few bright spots here and there, the entire conference had an air of Sony coasting on their laurels. It's like someone decided, lol, why put any effort in? We're miles ahead in console sales. Let's just stick a bunch of trailers up on the big screen and have people watch that while we sit backstage scoffing canapes. That sound problem persisting through the first 3 trailers was indicative of this blasé, couldn't really care attitude. I know technical issues are to be expected with any large stage show, but this felt like the conference's single solitary sound engineer had popped off for a cheeky wank while the trailers were running. Speaking of people, besides 2 brief appearances by Sean Layden, who, credit where it's due, is an amiable host, and several zombie actors hanging feet first on the rafters for a bit, there was 0 human presence on this year's Sony stage. Nobody to make the case for select games, elaborate on what we're seeing, or convey their passion for it to the audience. Jesus, even EA had Sony licked on that one. In conclusion, this was all rather uninspiring and bland really. Precious little here got me excited, and the bits that did pique my interest were smothered by this persistent, all-encompassing atmosphere of meh permeating the whole show. To be brutally honest, Sony could have saved themselves some cash and just tweeted the URL for a YouTube trailer playlist instead. It would have conveyed exactly the same information, and I could have spent the time I worked on this doing something more productive, like watching paint dry, or trying to learn Mandarin.
我不是美国人.
Wo Bushi Mogwai Ren. Oh come on! Although that would have meant missing the cool sitar band. So with that snorefest done, it's on to my video for the Nintendo conference, which thankfully shouldn't take as long to make since Ninty's conference was A, short, and B, somewhat more interesting than this one. After that will come my final E3 vid of this year, my summary of the Devolver Digital nonference, whereupon the curse of Livingstone cast upon my family will be lifted, and I will finally be free to have a short break to recharge my batteries, play Dishonored Death of the Outsider, and work out a more efficient way of covering next year's E3 conferences so they don't take up entire months of my life, amongst other things. Then after that I'll be back to covering week by week gaming news, the way Ganesh intended. Meanwhile, until then, you can go now.